There you go. The James.
Love it.
That's it.
That's fantastic.
As many times as we could get your name in there in the allotted time. And yeah,
I need that for my ringtone.
you can have it. You can have it. So I was quite proud of my use of the major flat six pentatonic on the last chord. So
Is that what that's called?
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. The kids love it. Anyway, listen, James. Nice to meet you, and thanks very, very much for doing this. I've been really looking forward to this. As I
My
think I
pleasure.
mentioned you before, I was knocked out when I heard that track. She's got to be somewhere. I'd never heard anything like it. It's kind of the guy that played it to me was saying, "You've got to check this out. It's just like Steely Dan." I thought, well, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't.
Hmm.
So that's I think it's that thing of not being pastiche. I mean, I tried to figure that tune out. All that stuff. I didn't know about that chord.
That's it exactly.
All
Yeah.
right, it sounds like C, E, F, G. Like a cluster kind of.
Yeah.
So
Hold on.
beautiful.
Let me put up a keyboard on my end so I can play along
Lovely.
if I have to.
Yeah, right. So that triad of a bass note,
I can't do it.
that alone is wild. I tell you, I did one of these things with, I never pronounced Bernie's name correctly, but Bernie Chiaravale, the guy from
Sure, yeah,
Bernie
sure,
Michael McDonald's band. And we were
sure.
talking about it. Some reason I just mentioned that I checked out your harmony on this thing. I don't know why I was talking about it. I think maybe he mentioned David Crosby. And he was saying, David Crosby's amazing for singing over that complex harmony that James writes, and he makes it sound so consonant, but the harmony's so hip underneath. And yeah, it's really something that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's I had that set of changes kicking around in my brain for quite some time, years and years, in fact, and the lyrics as well. And I just kind of dug it up and played it for Cross, and he really responded to it. So I rearranged it and set about trying to figure out who I could get to play on it.
Who is on that record, but I forgot to look that up.
Oh, so it's my my pal Steve DeStanislow, Stevie D on drums.
Yeah.
Stevie and I go way back to we were in a college jazz band together when we were both 18 and 19, I think.
Right.
And he was best man at my wedding.
Wow.
He was in CPR with David and I. So we just have. He's probably one of the people that I have the best musical shorthand with,
Right.
of many musicians that I've worked with. So yeah, Stevie D's on drums. I played the bass part on synth. Dean Parks is on guitar.
Right.
The horn section is another longtime friend and mentor of mine, Steve Tavoloni, who's just a brilliant saxophone player, Iwi guy. He does all of Thomas Newman's movies.
Oh,
He's a big part of Thomas Newman's sound. And I've known him since I was about 16, I think. And then Walt Fowler on flugelhorn. Trying to think what else is on that song. I think that's probably it.
Yeah. What about? I mean,
I forgot to, and Jacob Collier on.
Oh, of course. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Can't forget Jacob.
That was your idea, was it? Getting Jacob Collier on board?
It was. I mean, it was kind of our pie in the sky, dream casting thing. And when we were actually mixing, well, I guess we were about to mix the record at a studio here in Santa Monica called Groove Masters, Jackson Brown's studio. And it just so happened that Jacob was mixing, it might have been his first album at Hans Zimmer's studio, which is right next door to Jackson's studio. And when we found out that he was there, we met up, went over to, where Jacob was mixing his record. He played us some stuff and our jaws are all on the floor, of course. And we just humbly asked if he would come over and sing on our tune, and he did. It was kind of a very late night, last minute kind of thing, and he just came in and knocked it out in about an hour or
Right.
so. You know, he's
Well,
so fast, so good. Yeah,
unbelievable.
so it was really fun.
Yeah, great. I mean, I love that. What's this thing? You know, you got this F to G5 kind of thing with these triads. Where does that sort of triads over bass note thing? Where did all that come from? What led to that point where you came up with that sequence?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to turn on my Rhodes here so I can play a little bit. I just love that tonality. I think the way I play keyboards, a lot of times I'm playing fifths in the bass. I just love that sound, especially down in that low F, G, all the stuff down there. I love that kind of meaty fifth sound,
Yeah,
and I love just searching for other fairly simple triads that work over a different motif like that
yeah,
aren't normal, you know.
yeah,
And that's probably something I just put like a drum drops groove on or programmed a beat and just started jamming and found that,
yeah,
and I was really happy with it.
yeah. I mean, that next section of that is. Why is that's like so C over G, F minor 11, G minor 7, and that's like A flat major 7 but with a 6, 13.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and then I don't know if I got that right. And
Yeah, that's kind of an E flat minor 11 kind of thing.
yeah, ah, right.
Yeah,
And E
I
flat 6, B flat over E flat, F over B flat. It's that kind of. I tell you what's interesting. It's that sort of. I think I said that to you in when I approach it. It's that thing where you kind of got that Steely Dan influence that sounds like, but it's not pastiche. It's not. You couldn't say, "Oh yeah, it's one of those." It's not. You know what I mean? It's not. It's in no way a literal lift.
Oh, good.
It's that
Yeah,
with the triads over the bass notes, but you got your own thing. Oh man, that's such great.
yeah.
The
Oh man.
versions and things. Oh man, I
Oh,
had
I
fun
appreciate
taking
that.
that down. But so what went into that? Is there any specific stuff that you'd say if somebody's going to check that kind of music out, or try to get inside it deeper for influences, other than just transcribing that? Where would you point people?
Oh, well, certainly Donald Fagen's writing and
Yeah,
Walter's. Uh, you know, that was a huge influence. That Asia record came out when I was in high school, and I just, I lived that record basically, and Gaucho too when that came out. It really, and that led me to Bill Evans and you know Herbie Hancock stuff. I went through a very heavy jazz phase, and but a lot of those chords just became ingrained in me, especially those simple triads over the just a major block chord over the inverted fifth or whatever. But it moved my molecules around, I guess, that in a certain way. Um, so I don't know, that those shapes became very familiar to my hands. And uh, and when I met Kraz, and we started working together, um, we shared our love for that kind of music, and I listened to his catalog and realized he's got a lot of jazz sensibilities in there as well.
yeah,
That's why he resorted to all those tunings, because it was stuff he could not grab in a traditional guitar tuning.
right.
And so you know, when we were working on the CPR stuff years ago, I just felt like I had license to go anywhere I wanted to
Yeah.
harmonically.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it he was wide open to it, you know, so that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've read him talk about the jazz influences, and it kind of makes sense, really. I came very late to that party. In fact, you inspired me to check that stuff out. For some reason, it kind of passed me by. But Crosby, Stills, Nash. I mean, that vocal harmony is so on the money, and some quite bold voicings and changes in there. It's I don't know. It's just it wasn't my orbit, but man, it occurred to me checking out very late on that they're a huge influence on how people conceive of what a vocal section can do. Really, that sort of
Sure. Yeah.
vocal harmony.
Yeah. Just the sound of that and the things, the way some of the internal harmonies move that are not linear.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if they're aware that they were doing that. I think it just sounded good to them.
yeah,
But yeah, certainly they their stacks are just not linear static things moving around. You know, there's internal shifts and um, which is, you know, you find that on great Motown and
mm,
Stax, you know, background vocal things
sure,
too. So and Beatles, you know. So I think they were absorbing all that and doing their version of it, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean that I got where's that gone? That CPR record. I did have a year a second. Oh, here we go. Love that record. Well, that intro
Oh,
on Morrison. I don't know if I've heard it right, but that's so sort of ambiguous. That sort of
oh yeah.
key
Actually,
six
let's see.
nine, but I can't hear this.
There's a. It's all fourth, so it's EADG.
Oh, all right, right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's so wild, and you got that. That sounds very sort of Steely Dan kind of thing again. It's that
Yeah, that was the
same
first.
thing.
That was the very first thing that Cross and I wrote together.
Wow.
Um, and he had just given me those lyrics and said, "See what you can do with this." And man, I was just trying to channel, you know, Joni in a way because I knew that he had a great connection with Joni Mitchell. I don't know. There was another one where I just started moving my hands around and trying to find something cool
Yeah,
to show him, you know.
like McCoy Tyner meets Joni Mitchell kind of vibe. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw a
right.
video. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was you and David Crosby and a guitar player that you were writing with, and you were playing a
Jeff
bit of
Pevar.
jazz. No, it wasn't. It wasn't Jeff Pevar. It was another guy. You were in a writing session. The three of you guys. You started playing some jazz. I thought, oh man, I must ask this guy what is your background in jazz because it's serious stuff. You're a great jazz player. So what were you doing
Uh,
before you got into this existence?
um, gosh, well, you know, I don't consider myself a jazz player really because I know several and I'm not one. But thank you. But you know, I did some of my earliest gigs. In fact, my first touring gig was with Ronnie Laws, who's uh, a great saxophonist, and I that was my first uh, kind of career move was playing with different jazz artists like him and Phil Upchurch and some different people like that. I got to work with Take Six a little bit. Oleta Adams, who's a little bit more gospel. That was when she was being produced by Roland of Tears for Fears, and I toured with Oleta. Um, but yeah, I just I grew up kind of. I think you know, I shifted to very jazz heavy studies uh, right right after high school, I think, and a lot of that I have to credit with. Um, there was a great R&B, jazz, funk outfit uh, where I grew up out in the Inland Empire here, east of Los Angeles, called Jasper, and it was mostly guys from out that way in the Inland Empire, which is just kind of a suburb way out from Los Angeles, but a hotbed of very accomplished funk and R&B musicians. I was lucky enough to just be taken under the wing of several of the legends out there, and played in top 40, bar bands basically, and different bands with these guys. And that led me to working with Jasper. And it was such a smoking band that a lot of players from LA would come and drive the hour and a half or whatever to come play with this group. So I met a lot of amazing musicians from Los Angeles that I maybe would not have had access to. Um, yeah, just drummers like Bubba Bryant, Mike White. Gosh, the list is endless. I met Steve Tavoloni around that time. Yeah, it really was, it opened my world up to just all the great players out there and opportunities in that kind of jazz field. And I was doing other rock stuff and R&B, a lot of R&B stuff. And yeah, that was kind of the origins of my musical education out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's how everybody really, really gets down to it, isn't it? Actually play
Yeah.
really rather than
Yes.
anything else.
Yeah, and it's there was no YouTube to to learn stuff. Um, Maybe thankfully, I don't know, but I certainly was lucky just to have some great mentors that were very kind and generous with their knowledge, and taught me how to groove and taught me how to work in a rhythm section and play cool chords and just be a good bandmate.
Yeah. Yeah. So at what point did you start sort of recording and, making records, basically, putting things together for yourself?
Oh man, right around high school. I mean, I always had this drive to write and get my stuff on tape, and at that point there was no home studios, so I sought out some of these smaller studios out there in the Inland Empire, and would say, I was working a lot of different jobs for the gas company and different different gigs, just saving up money so that I could maybe get keyboard equipment and also try to get some studio time and and wrangle some musicians to play with me. But I did, none of it led to record deals or anything, but it was a great process for me to kind of learn my way around the studio. I was always a bit of a tyrant in the studio. I guess I still maybe am. Uh, I just I was thinking back to those days, and I kind of knew what I wanted and would just badger people to get get what I wanted in the studio. Which is I've softened my approach a little bit, but yeah, I always wanted to produce and record and write.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that you've got a very clear idea of what you want. I read, or did I hear it in an interview? You were talking about programming. You mentioned it earlier, actually, with she's got to be some programming bass lines and things like that. And I saw that breakdown video you did of Rodriguez for a night, and you're actually showing your screen sharing, which is incredibly useful for somebody who's trying to get that stuff together. It's really interesting to see your sort of sample libraries, but to see you having put it all together, it's so obvious that the concept is not vague. The concept is really solid. So one thing I'm looking, sorry, I'm looking at the other screen I've got here. If you don't mind taking a side, so I've been talking about Rodriguez for a night. If
Sure.
anybody's watching this and hasn't come across this record before, obviously we're talking about David Crosby's new album. And this tune, Rodriguez for a Night, is written by James, and the lyrics are by Donald Fagen. But the music it's another one of those things where I'd say, man, that sounds like Steely Dan, but it isn't pastiche. It's not that thing. It's not like those sort of, you hear people use those exact combinations the way that Donald Fagen and Walter Becker combined trials of a bass. It isn't that, but there's some, I don't know, there's a commonality to it. But I can't help but think with some of these things of yours that I've checked out, that they almost remind me of that sort of voice leading of sort of almost unrelated chords that you get in things like Wayne Shorter tunes and Herbie Hancock tunes.
Yes.
That sort of 60s jazz harmony or Marcus Miller kind of things as well. Kind of voice leading being the key. I love that. I don't know if I got this sequence right. I don't know if I've got this right. So you got that guitar part later on. Love that.
Yes.
So,
Oh, thank you.
but you crafted that part, right? That's what I mean. It's how specific your arranging idea is. That's
Oh,
your idea.
yeah. Well, and very astute of you to bring up Wayne Shorter and especially Marcus Miller, because again, Marcus, especially that Miles Davis Tutu album,
Oh yeah.
was a huge influence on me harmonically and groove wise and everything, and just Marcus's approach. But yeah, again, a lot of Marcus's chord changes seeped into my DNA, I think, and that one, I, I was thinking a lot about Donald's writing and just how on the roads, uh, sometimes it's a very simple thing where it's one chord and only the thumb is moving, and that was the case there. Like, yeah, only the thumb is kind of moving up from that low E flat.
Yeah.
And man, when I found that, I was like, oh, I'm onto something here.
Yeah. That reminds me, what Steely Dan tune is it? It's a bit like that kind of thing. What tune is it?
Oh yeah, gosh, I hope I didn't rip that off. That's
what that is. Oh, so it's Donald Fagen. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I mean, it's not. I mean, there's a vague relation between the two of them.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of here. Did I get this right? So you got. I don't know if I heard that as that, but where's F in the bass? Did I really get this right? Where you got an A and a B flat ringing against each other? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, actually, it's again in my keyboard left hand, it's F and C, and then it's A, B flat, and C.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, hard to grab on guitar, I know.
Yeah. Man, I love that. That's so cool. So
it's kind of crunchy. Yeah,
it's so beautiful. I mean, that part.
thank
you.
Yep. Yeah.
So like C minor 7, it's like G6 note, B flat minor 11.
Yes.
Like G flat major 9 kind of thing. A flat. I love that.
Oh,
Your horn writing in there is killer.
So that's like an F9. Yeah, you had it. Boy, your ears.
I mean, I love it. That horn part. Oh yeah, man, this is so great. This is the best record I've heard in ages.
Oh man, thank you so much.
It's a thrill. It's a thrill. Let me just take a moment. With the last bit, when you go.
Yep.
That's so cool. That's
Oh
so
man,
cool. It's
thanks.
just who would have thought there'd be an evolution from Steely Dan? But you've cracked this. Like, what do you listen to after you listen to every Steely Dan record
Oh
thousands of
gosh.
times, like everybody I know? But no,
Man.
thank you, and I'm sure other people would want to say thank you because it's
I
for
appreciate it.
all those guys who love that music. Yes, there's something else that's sort of taken it and run somewhere else with it. It's very
Uh,
impressive to make something
that's very
very
cool. Very cool to hear that.
no, but it's very uncontrived. It's man, it's humbling to hear how it's just one of those things, you know. You should ride with Donald Fagen. He should call you again.
Oh, well, that would be a dream of mine. We'll
Well,
see.
yeah, wait by the phone. I'm sure. I'm sure he's going to get back to you. So it's absolutely amazing, really amazing. Um,
Thanks.
yeah. What else did I want to ask you? Michael McDonald. There's another topic. So that was River Rise was the first song that was released from this new album.
Yes.
I think I must have heard that about 200 times. And I know a lot of other people have been really into that. What was that experience like? Because that was that more of an in-person thing? Did you go to Nashville? I got Bernie told me you were going
Oh, no, Michael lives out here in California now, and
to.
yeah, he lives up Santa Barbara area by Cross. And I had met Michael several times when he would come to see Crosby shows, and I'm just such a huge. He was such a hero of mine growing up. I wanted to be Michael McDonald, basically. Um, so the chance to get to meet him, and then he was so gracious and kind and complimentary. It was always a dream of mine to work with him on something. And when I was writing that song, and I came up with the chorus, I'm like, oh man, this would just kill with Cross and Michael singing that stack together.
Yeah,
Um, so Cross just said, "Well, call him and ask him," and I did, and he right away said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I told him, "Oh, I'll come up to you, whatever studio you want to work at." I didn't even have the song finished at that point, but I had the chorus, and I said, "Well, I got to strike while the iron is hot and get Michael on this." And he said, "Well, I'll come down to your studio, in Altadena," and he did. And and we started working. I go, Michael, I got to apologize. I'm not totally finished writing the song. And he goes, "Well, do you want to work on it?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." And he proceeded to help me finish, the second verse. We wrote the bridge together, and he sang all the background parts all in one day. Like we just knocked it out, and it was probably peak experience for me, like a life changing thing. Just because here's this guy that I idolized since I was 15, 16 years old, and we're working together in my studio and writing a song together, and it was a dream come true. Really, he's just such a sweet man and so damn good. I mean, he's just so fast with his harmonies, and you know, I mean, I almost burst out in tears, I think, when I first heard him in my little humble booth you can see behind me here on
yeah.
Zoom. I go, Michael McDonald's in my vocal booth, and there's that voice that I've heard my whole life, and it was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
But man, kudos to Mike for helping me finish that song because he just elevated the proceedings immensely.
Well, it's a beautiful song, so it's a good fit. You guys, you should write together again. It's an amazing thing. So your
Uh,
vocal booth's been blessed by that voice from heaven. But
right? Yeah, I
it,
know.
man, that record sounds incredible. You did such a great job. It's like
Oh, thanks.
such a
It's
great thing.
Thank you. It was a challenging way to work, just because of the pandemic and everything. We couldn't really do much, you know, recording as a band kind of thing, which is actually kind of fine by me. I I kind of prefer to work um, getting doing overdubs, kind of getting my drum track together and then building the track that way. it sure is fun to record everybody together, and there's certain kind of rock things where that's really needed. But going back to the way Donald and Walter worked with kind of building the perfect beast, starting with a great drum track.
Yeah.
And that's how that one, I had my demo track that I did in Logic, and my engineer Dan Garcia and I, and a great drummer, another longtime pal of mine, Gary Novak, went into a studio here in LA and recorded the drums for that one.
Right. Right.
Before I had any other elements on there, really,
Right.
except for my MIDI stuff.
Yeah. Did Gary Novak play with Chick Corea? I'm sure I saw him playing Cork in Ireland with Chick Corea.
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in the acoustic band
Right.
for a number of years. That's
Right.
that's one of the musical highlights of my life. I was in New York for something, and Gary was playing with Chick and invited me to see him at the Blue Note, and got me tickets right behind Chick Corea's piano bench. Uh, so that was amazing, because Chick Corea is another hero of mine, of course. And so I saw the first set of Chick Corea, and then walked over to the bottom line and heard the Brecker Brothers' second set. So
Yeah.
I was that was like my New York peak music experience that night in
Wow.
New York. Yeah, my head almost exploded.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Great player anyway. And that's oh man, he's
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's just yeah, his pocket is just undeniable, and his choices, his sound, everything, the full
yeah.
package.
I mean, it seems almost rare that you get somebody who's such a great straight ahead jazz player but can really contain it and focus and make great sort of funk. I don't know, a bit distasteful almost to call it pop music, but kind of is, that kind of
Yeah, yeah.
song stuff. He's really good at it.
No,
So,
there's only a few, to be sure.
yeah, yeah. So when you've got these guys together, how do you present the musical information to them? Are you writing charts for everybody, and if so, are you writing fairly nebulous things, or are you writing quite specific charts for these guys?
Well, as far as with Gary, um, I would scribble out of kind of just the form, basically. I'm I know how to notate figures and stuff, but Gary's so good at it, and he has his own kind of code for
Mm.
fills and stuff like that. So he's so quick that he and Steve DeStanislaw works the same way. They make their own notes on kind of a rough chart that I did. And I guess the same would be said for Dean Parks. I would just do a basic kind of chord chart, with the form and my voicings scribbled above. Um, Usually not too much in the way of kicks or figures. I leave that to them, you
Yeah,
know. The horn charts were pretty detailed, just because I had certain short sondos and things that I wanted to get matching my. But I did have MIDI horns on there to show them.
yeah,
Uh, and so yeah, that stuff was charted out, and then I played everything else, so I didn't need to write that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, those horn parts are killing. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
reminded me of something like Deacon Blues or something, where those kind of horn parts you just think that's it, couldn't be any better. It's just great writing. That's
I know, I just love that. I love that sound, and I don't get to hear it much in modern music. The two or three tenor saxophones, a flugelhorn, maybe a trombone. I just something about that section. Um, Again, it's going back to great Motown stacks. Kind of, I don't know. It's just a certain sound, just those tenors together. And the Bible for me is Tom Scott's writing on those Steely Dan records. I mean, those horn charts are just like gold. I mean, they're the horn writing Bible for me.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I'm just looking at this. One thing I noticed is you use soprano sax as a solo instrument on a lot of David Crosby's things.
Hmm.
I mean, that's kind of, I guess Branford Marsalis did that on some of those Sting things to great effect. But it's a
And Wayne
voice.
Shorter on Joni's stuff as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Is
Yeah,
that your influence? Is that kind of the reference point then?
those two exactly, and the fact that my friend and mentor Steve Tavoloni is probably one of the finest saxophonists in the world
Yeah,
after Wayne and Branford. um, yeah, he's just an incredible musician. So to
wow.
have that resource and know that he can dance with a vocalist, not many woodwind players can do that.
Right.
Um, Wayne Shorter, Branford, Tavoloni, um, Bob Berg, was guys like that.
Yeah.
I there's others I'm sure, and I'm just not thinking of the name, but those uh, I love featuring Steve Tavoloni on stuff, just because he's again a lifelong friend, an incredible mentor to me, and Crosby loves his playing, and they have a very tight bond, the two of them. So there's just a lot going on there. It's very familial.
It kind of sounds like, it sounds so natural. He's playing quite freely, but just everything just works. It's just, oh man, it's like a head massage. It's really something. Really amazing. So,
Yeah.
so I guess it was your idea to get Snarky Puppy involved as well. And is that your thing? Or?
No, no, David had the other band. He did a couple other records with Michael League and Becca Stevens and Michelle Willis.
Ah,
But I've met Becca on several occasions and worked with her on one song for the Sky Trails record. Um, and I've met Michael, but I've never worked with Snarky
ah,
Puppy.
right, okay, okay, yeah. I've got to ask you this. This is probably a bit raw. I don't know whether I should spring this on you or not, but um, we lost Mike Finnigan yesterday. Well, and I have to ask you because I knew him a little bit, as I mentioned to you, not well. And everybody else I know knew him a million times better, but my wife and I thought he was great, and he did a couple of things for me. He did a couple of sessions, and as I mentioned to you, he was supposed to do a couple of others, but we didn't get around to it. Could you give us a little taste of what you learned from playing and hanging with Mike? Because I know you did a bit of playing with, quite a bit of playing with
Oh
him.
my gosh, there's so much. You know, I had I had met him even before I worked with Crosby, Stills and Nash, because we were doing CPR, and I went to see CSN shows, and he was always just very gracious and very kind about the CPR project and everything. Um, when when there came a time where Jeff Pevar and I both started playing with Crosby, Stills and Nash, I was obviously concerned because you know Mike had been the only keyboard player. I didn't want to go in. I felt like I was maybe stepping on toes. Not. I don't know. I was just very guarded about. I was concerned about how it would be received, let's say. And Mike was so sweet and welcoming, and he didn't have to be that way. We were brought in because I think David wanted to do some of the CPR material. Graham and David wanted to do some of their Crosby Nash stuff, and Jeff and I were a big part of that sound. Um, and for me, it was a dream gig to be able to tour with a Crosby, Stills and Nash, and and tour on that level with these great players and everything. Um, so Mike and I just became really tight. I mean, he was just such a gregarious, fun, beautiful guy, and he was just so generous with his wisdom about the road and life, and just funny. Man, he would just, I just wanted to be around him.
Yeah,
It was just a joy, especially those first few tours. We just had a band bus, and just to just to sit there and listen to Mike tell stories for miles and miles and miles. Some of the best touring memories I have ever, you know. Um, I don't consider myself a B3 player, and I kind of suck at it compared to guys like Mike and Todd Caldwell that that's their that's their instrument, you know. I'm pretty much ham-handed on Hammond, no pun intended. I can fake some stuff, and I picked up a few things watching Mike, but it's a whole different animal. I mean, he's when he's playing B3, you know, just the volume pedal alone, I can't grasp that. You know, it's just there's so many different things, and the way he's moving the stops around within a note, and just I don't know. I would just sit there and watch him and try to pick up a few things, and I just basically said, you know, I should just stick to piano and Rhodes because uh, that's there's guys that do that, and God bless them, because that's not an easy instrument to make sound like that. And when Mike would play it, it was just like this animal, this big machine of sound, and he had this great old Hammond B3, and I think that B3's name was Grandma, and his Leslie was like it seemed like it was about to explode into 1,000 pieces. It was just rumbling, and oh man, I would just sit behind this Leslie, you know. Sometimes there was a few songs where I had off, you know, it was just going to be a Stephen Stills kind of rock tune, and I was like, I don't need to get in the way of this. So I would just go back around the stage and kind of sit behind Mike's B3 and just marvel at the force
Yeah,
coming out of there, you
yeah,
know. I'm gonna miss him a lot. He was just a great spirit, and man, just a great guy, great friend.
yeah, yeah. Have you ever heard his version of Hard Times by Ray Charles?
Yes,
Because the
yeah.
little subtle things he's doing in the background, oh man.
Oh, I know. And it's not just the note choices. It's again, it's those the different stops and how he can just bring things down to a whisper
Yeah.
and fatten things up on the fly. I don't know how you do that. It's
And the
incredible.
and the singing as well. I mean, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the best blues singers in our lifetimes and in modern music, for
Yeah,
sure.
my favorite, absolutely my favorite. I mean, we did a version of just for this educational thing. We did a version of "Kind-Hearted Woman Blues" by Robert Johnson, and I totally took it apart and put it back together, kind of thing. And he was
Nice.
really nice about it. But man, I said, "How long did it take you to get it together?" He said, "He was." I felt a bit guilty, really. He said it was the first take. It's like I said. He said I felt a bit bad taking the money, but it works for me. Absolutely works for
Yeah.
me. But he
Same
was.
thing on the Hendrix record, you know. It was just like, oh, let's just roll tape, see
Yeah.
what happens.
Well, it's funny you
It
should
was
mention that,
magic,
but
you know.
we did a we did a short version of All Along the Watchtower for this same project, and I actually got the guys, some good players, really good players in the band, to do a full length version. The drummer played with Eric, Ian Thomas played with Eric Clapton and Stevie Wonder and all these guys, and George Michael, huge session player over here. And I got Mike to play this gospely sort of dirty blues slow intro before we went into time. So in honor of him, I'm going to get around to putting the solo guitar on. I just haven't been brave enough to do it. But
I'm sure it'll be amazing. I'd love to hear that.
well, Mike's amazing. I don't know about my bit. So one thing I wanted to ask you. I mean, I don't want. I think I said to you earlier, I didn't want to harp on about it because I think this history is something that is kind of, you know, a lot of people have showed a lot of interest in. But I think for guitar players who might not know this kind of music, David Crosby is your birth father. What have you picked up from him generally? I mean, he's an amazing musician, but you come from a sort of, it sounds like you come from a slightly different background in music. What, you know, what's the cross pollination there, and what have you got out of that?
Oh, gosh. Well, yeah, you know, that was the thing when we first met. I was coming from this jazz R&B funk background, but I also had my rock side. And David was coming from this rock folk thing, but he had his jazz side and loved R&B. So we just instantly kind of found our common ground and expanded off of that. And what I've picked up so many things from him just about songwriting, but I think the biggest thing was that there doesn't it, he just showed me that that gray area between folk and rock and jazz is just this vast landscape to be explored.
Mm.
It doesn't have to just be simple, 1-4-5 stuff to be folk or Americana,
Mm.
or country. You can have some harmonic exploration there. And I think maybe, before we really started working together, I was more compartmentalized in my thinking about that. Um, just because, I liked my jazz guys, I liked my funk and R&B, and then I liked my rock stuff over here. But David blurred all the lines for me a bit, which was very freeing in a sense, which I think led to some of that CPR stuff because it certainly had his sensibilities and his vocal harmonies and his melodies and everything. And when I was going on my musical roots trip, when I found out he was my birth father, I was like, man, this guy's got some pretty deep harmonic stuff going on with these tunings. Like
Mm.
like he and Joni were maybe the only two that I knew of at that time anyway, doing that kind of stuff where you've got this beautiful detuned Martin down to a low C or something, and these gorgeous, low voicings. And I that those speak to me. I love stuff down low.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean, yeah, he opened a whole world to me musically
Mm.
when we first started working together, and still does. I mean, there's things we're working on right now that he just played me a new piece that he wrote the other day. He found a new tuning, which he always does, and he played me this piece that he's working on. He's going to be 80 this Saturday,
My bless you.
but he played me this new tune, and he was giddy as a teenager. Like, look what I found! Look what I
Yeah.
just came up with.
Yeah.
That's incredibly inspiring, and should be to everybody. That
Yeah.
like, don't start, don't stop looking,
Yeah.
don't stop searching. Um, boy, that's just inspired me to do the same, and
Yeah.
I hope I always will, like him.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure. I mean, it's a very young presence he's got. When he sings that line in Rodriguez, "I'm just a drugstore cowboy," it's just so great. You know,
Oh man,
it's
yeah.
that's that. I don't know what somebody else I saw on a was talking about that line. It's so cool. He's got such a hip sort of presence, and the delivery. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
full of
No, it's
one of the great musicians. It's great.
it's quintessential Crosby. That line, he just kind of goes for it.
Yeah, really
Yeah,
cool. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for taking the time to do this. It's a real honor to talk to you. And I mean what I say. I mean, she's got to be somewhere, just blew me away. But to check out this stuff on this new record, it's a thrill. So it's a real honor
Uh,
to spend the time talking to you. Thanks so much for
Thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure. You're such a great musician yourself, and boy, it's so fun to talk music with you.
Oh, man,
Anytime.
thank you so much. Listen, all the best. And if you ever come over, I'll buy you a glass of wine if you ever have 5 minutes ever. But
Make it a pint, and and
pint,
we'll do it.
lovely. You have a pint. I'll have a pint. I'll tell you one thing I've got to say. I'm doing, I'm prepping this orchestral gig playing the musical Led Zeppelin, and I'm learning some of those. It's not quite the same kind of thing as David's concept or Joni Mitchell, but he does some of that stuff. It's quite interesting. That sort of like wild free, like open C and dad gad, but you change one of the strings from a B to an A. So it's Joni Mitchell and David Crosby just tore that apart. But it's interesting. I have a toe in that water, so you've inspired me to go and look deeper into that stuff.
Oh, fantastic.
James, thanks so much, man. I'll let you go, but very kind of you, and all the best.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thanks, mate. See
Cheers.
you. Bye.
Here's our guest, James Raymond.